I am excited about the possibilities of Grassroots News. My background is in television news. I went to journalism school in the broadcast sequence, and I was first a reporter, and so I was on the streets and would be given an assignment, go cover this flood or this catastrophe, or kind of whatever was happening, and a lot of times human interest stories. I did a lot of those. Then got into producing newscasts, and I just really enjoyed telling stories and conveying news. But somewhere in the world we changed, and television news became much more opinion-based, and it lost the whole idea of just telling stories. And that's what I'm excited about Grassroots News, is that we can just tell stories, and stories of hope, and stories of truth, and stories that impact people. And I think that's the cool thing about Grassroots News, is you can tell a story in the smallest country of the world, and it will impact an entire world as we build our audience and people are seeing these. I think the cool thing is when we first started, and you've seen some of the stories on Grassroots News, we put the story up on YouTube of the Haiti cholera story, and instantly CBS New York had emailed us and said we'd be interested in the footage. So you see the potential that it can go beyond just our website, and that's exciting. One of the things I want to do today is kind of go over the steps of doing a story, and kind of what the process is going from I have an idea to getting it to Grassroots News. And one of the biggest parts is finding the story. And a lot of times the story will find you. You may be in a country that there is an earthquake or a hurricane, or there is something happening. Or it could be that you need to think about, okay, in my realm of things, what are people talking about? What am I curious about? Where, how do I choose that story? So the whole point of finding the story that's going to be strong enough is just starting with an idea. And a lot of times it's something you're curious about, something you're wondering about, something that people are talking about, but it has interest beyond your little realm there, but that you can see people wanting to know about it. And I want to kind of go through both of those stories, because a lot of times if we have a story that just kind of, we happen to be there when it happens, the wildfires of Colorado, or we're going to see one later about the volcanic action in Iceland. Those stories they happen and we're there, and that's what I think will be really cool for Grassroots News, because we can get the story up immediately. If you're somewhere, a story is happening, get it to Grassroots News, and it goes fast. Whereas a lot of the other networks would have to find someone who is there or who can get there, and you have that time lag. So that's why time is of the essence when a story has happened to you. Once you find a story, you need to research it a little bit. If you are in a location and something is happening, one of the best ways is to find out more about the story is to interview people. If it's just kind of a situation that's around you, find someone, ask them, if there's some witness to what has happened, or there is someone that is in charge. A lot of it depends on the type of story, whether it is something specific that's happening in one location, or if you're doing a more broader story that you may need to look for someone specific that would have information about that. But one of the best ways to research a story is start asking questions. And asking questions in an interview situation is a lot of times I will talk to someone even before you think about rolling a camera, and develop, get an idea of what the story is. And a lot of times you'll hear them say something that will trigger, oh, that'll be good, I want to get that on camera. So a lot of times it's can be called a pre-interview, but it's really just building rapport with who you're going to interview and finding out more about your story. We have talked about on the interview, I think you guys have gone through some of the different processes of just framing and how that's set up, and where your mic is and where their mic is. Some of those basics are what you want to do when you set it up for the camera. Once you get these interviews, and I think one of the situations in an interview is start listening. And it's really difficult because you're thinking all of the things you need to be doing. But when you're interviewing someone, you need to listen to what they're saying. Because a lot of times what they're saying will be the next question you want to ask. I mean, you can build on that. And a lot of times when you're interviewing someone, you get to the end, then you say, well, is there anything else you want to add? Because a lot of times they have something on their mind, but it hasn't been necessarily what you have asked a question about. And sometimes that gives them the freedom to kind of really tell what they wanted to say. You want to, a lot of times, we think of the journalism stories and the 5 W's and H, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And the whole idea of those kinds of questions are best that you know them. Maybe get those in the pre-interview, because a lot of times that who, what, where, those are just facts that you can put into your story, into the narration. But when you interview them, the why and the how are the important ones, because those are going to bring out better sound bites, just a little bit more personality, a little bit more interesting sound bites. Then after you've done your interview, the other thing that you want to listen for is, and think about as you're doing this interview, is what visuals come to mind. Now, if you're in the midst of an earthquake and are talking to people about, coming through this earthquake and living through it, well, then your visuals are probably going to be the earthquake and different things. But it depends on if it's a human interest story and you're doing something about a musician and they're talking about different things, then a lot of times what you are hearing them say, you want to think about your visuals and kind of match those, the B-roll we call it. So your interview would be the A-roll and your visuals would be your B-roll. I think a lot of times when you are looking for that video that supports the story, you don't want to go too far that you're like everything they say that you feel like you need to match, but you definitely want to kind of think about the images that will best tell that story. And then, so you've gathered the things that you will take to your editor. And when I say editor, I mean your editing program. You've got your interview, you've got your B-roll, and then a lot of times I will sit down and watch the entire interview. And I've already sat through it once, and a lot of times I'll just kind of remember it. And it depends if it's a more complicated story, or earlier on when I did stories, I would actually transcribe the interview, because it would help me kind of understand what were the best things they said, or if I wanted to refer back to it. So you take that and you've got your interview, and a lot of times, your interviews, you don't want to make them so long that it's cumbersome to get through. You're looking for a 3-minute story, so your interview probably only wants to be 10 minutes long or so, maybe 12, maybe less. But you don't need to do this for a 3-minute story to be really complicated, but you do want to get them at ease with you, and so a lot of times you'll have the best stuff at the end of the interview. Once you're listening through the interview, your story should be coming together as you kind of figure out how you want to tell it. And a lot of times what they're saying in the interview is what you can script as your narration. But what I do is that when I go through the interview, I will probably select 2-3 sound bites that are the best. And usually a sound bite, I would say, would be between 15 and 25 seconds. Now that's just, I want to say I'm giving you guidelines, but there are certain rules, but then we need to know why we break the rules. Sometimes a good soundbite is 4 seconds and someone's just, saying, well, what do you mean? I mean, they're just little snippets and kind of give the story flavor. But typically, soundbites would be between 15 and 25 seconds. If you get them a lot longer than that, you'll lose interest in a 3-minute story. So once you've picked out your 2 or 3 sound bites that are 15 to 25 seconds, what I would do is order those and then write my script to kind of go into the sound bite and out of the sound bites. And a lot of times if you've got one person you're going to interview, then you might have 3 sound bites from that one person. But it may be that you interview 3 or 4 people and you want 1 sound bite from each person. It kind of depends on the story. If it's you know, kind of an earthquake and you're getting lots of different people to weigh in on what's happening, then you might have, you know, 3, 4 people talking about the same thing. If you're doing a human interest story, you're probably doing a longer interview with one person and looking for several sound bites from that one person. And then once I've kind of, you know, identified the sound bites, and then I will write my narration, and then you want to record that. So you record your narration, and it's really important when you're recording narration to kind of be conversational, but also think about that you're telling someone a story. And I think that's one of the biggest things about this whole Grassroots News is just think about telling a story. We tell stories all the time. So think about how you tell a story. So in your script, you write the scripts, you write in and out of the sound bites, and then you can kind of go back and say, okay, did I answer the questions? Did I answer who, what, where, why, when, and how? Did I, you know, answer those? Now, how may not be in every story, but typically the who, what, where, and when will always be in every story. Once you've recorded the narration, then you've got all the tools to put into your editing program. And then it's kind of the cut and paste where, you know, you've got your, you know, just different pieces down to the timeline, or if you're doing it on your iPhone. And I think especially for the people that are doing iPhone editing, the biggest thing is keep it simple. You want, you know, your story may just be more visuals and 2 sound bites, or it may just be sound bites and visuals and not a narration. So what we're finding on the iPhone, you just want to keep the story simple. The editing process is one of the longer parts of the whole process. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, I can just go do a story and it's quick. But it's, I think a lot of times, you know, when I was a reporter at a television station, we pretty much worked all day on one story. So sometimes we might, you know, do a little bit other than, you know, depending on how complicated the story is. Sometimes we might be working on a story for several days and then, you know, spend all day in the production part of it. So keep in mind it is a time, you know, a thing that you really have to devote time to. One of the next things I do once I edit a story, and I've watched it several times and kind of keep going back and, you know, is this saying what I want it to say, is I show it to somebody else and letting them kind of watch through it and kind of understand, is this what I'm trying to communicate? Are they getting it? And a lot of times that's where I can tell, and then I ask them at the end, do you have any questions? And they will pretty much kind of figure out if there's something that needs to be adjusted or something they're not understanding, and you may want to, you know, tweak it a little bit and that kind of thing. And once you know, your story is to that point, what we are doing at Grassroots News is, you know, you submit your story, you upload it, and then we're having someone look at it and then give you feedback, and we're ready to go. And I think one of the next things for to do after you've gotten the story on Grassroots News is to spread the word. You know, get it out to your friends, get it out to your Facebook page, get it out to the world beyond, and start, you know, trying to see that go viral. I think those are the steps to the process, and it's always kind of, you start looking at the different pieces, and they're all just, you need to look at them as different steps. Don't think of it as all in, oh my goodness, there's this entire story to do, but just start at the very beginning, especially if you're a beginner, is to go, okay, I'm going to find my story. And then once you find your story, research your story. And then once you've researched it, find your interviews. And a lot of times these steps are all kind of mixed in together, so that you may, you know, as you research your story, you may start interviewing people. And then as you interview people, you may find that you need more research. But they're all different steps, and each story is going to be a little bit different, so the steps might change. You may be in a place and you've got all the great visuals. So from that, you want to create a story from the visuals you have. So you already have your visuals, then you want to find the sound bites to match it. In another story, you may have your interview first, and then you would go find your visuals that you want to fill in your interview with. So a lot of these steps, even though I've given them to you in a certain order, depending on what the story is, the order may change. I think one of the biggest things I want to encourage you to do is to just try a story. A lot of times it looks like it's a huge deal and you think, oh, can I do this? But I think you can watch tutorials and you can listen to different instructional videos about it, but one of the best ways to learn, and probably one of the quickest ways to learn, is to do a story, is to actually say, I'm going to go do it. And, it is kind of daunting to think about the task at hand, to, get your camera, to go shoot an interview, and to shoot some of the visuals for it, and then the editing. But if you'll just take step by step, and a lot of times you've got a friend that can help you through a part of the step. Grab a friend that is interested in it and wants to go do the interview with you. So you've got an extra person to do that. Grab a friend that wants to go shoot visuals so that they've got an eye for it, or you're looking for different things. And especially editing, if you know someone that likes to edit, grab them, help them, let them help you learn. And a lot of times I learn a lot by watching editing, but you learn a whole lot more if you're at the controls and saying, okay, this is where I want this, and this is, that you're splicing it together the way you want. In the end, it's just a process of learning. So I just really want to encourage you to don't think it's as complicated as it is. Especially when we think about breaking news stories, that you're in the midst of something and it is happening. We all want to take out our iPhone and, or some kind of camera or something and record what's happening. And I think if we just think about taking visuals of what is there right then and get those down, that's most of the story right there, especially in breaking news. If you have what's happening recorded, you've got most of the story. Then you can go back and get witnesses and find different people, and you'll be in the moment, and it'll come together really easily. I think, and also when you think about the production values, when you've got a breaking news story, we just want to see what you've experienced. We want to hear from people who have witnessed something. We don't really care if the camera's a little, shaky or something. The production values are very forgiving at that point. When you're trying to do a more complicated story, a more human interest story, that's when the production values are raised a little bit, and we do expect a higher standard of just all the production values, that the levels are higher at that point. I'm going to take some questions now, and I know those aren't probably, but does anybody have anything that they want to ask, or we may...
I was just wondering about the dynamic between finding your story and writing your story.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times, the question is, how do you find your story, the dynamic between finding a story and writing your story. I think a lot of times as you kind of think about what stories can be, your stories you're going to start writing it as you kind of think about it. I mean, I think a lot of times you come at the story from your perspective, and there's going to be a little bit of just the whole idea from being curious, you start kind of writing it. And I think the ideas come together. And so I'm always, if I'm, kind of even have an idea about the story and start writing it, I'm going to jot those ideas down. Now, whether they end up in the final script, I don't know, but it definitely directs you along the way to do the, as you kind of put the pieces together and pull in sound bites and pull in the visuals. Another thing I do after I've shot visuals, and shot the B-roll of the story, I will typically go back and watch all of that, and then pick out the pieces that are the best. And a lot of times I will write my script around my best video. And a lot of times I will go through the visuals and say, okay, what is the absolute best shot? And I typically will want that up front. Now, it doesn't always work that way because it depends on where it is in the story and how things are molded. But a lot of times as I go through the visuals and I pick out my very best shot, that will hook them in one of the best ways. I think one of the things that you have to realize that you want to do in the very first part of your story is you've got to convince them that they want to watch the next 3 minutes. And so during that first 10, 15 seconds, you've got to create a reason that they want to watch. And that's, just right off the top. And it could be a visual reason. I mean, just a best shot of, kind of what are you going to show me? But that needs to be, why do I need to care? Why do I want to invest the next 3 minutes in this story?